Please comment where you are watching in the world. When you've been single for a while and someone comes along saying all the right things, it's easy to get swept up. That's exactly how it started with Steven. He lived in Florida, and I was in Atlanta, so I didn't expect anything serious. But almost immediately, he asked to call me. That night, we talked for over an hour. His voice was smooth, charming, and confident. He talked about how much he loved Atlanta, how he'd been wanting to visit, how he was planning to come up soon. It felt like we were clicking. Fast. Too fast. The very next day, he sent me a screenshot of an Airbnb he'd allegedly booked for a weekend in Atlanta. "This is where I'm staying next Friday. Can't wait to meet you in person." Now, I've seen enough TikToks and watched enough true crime to know that love bombing is real. And this was textbook. But I also didn't want to be the girl who shut someone down just because they were enthusiastic. Maybe he was just excited. Maybe he really was feeling a connection. Still, my inner alarm was going off. So I did what any cautious millennial woman would do. I turned to the Facebook group Are We Dating the Same Guy? There are city-specific versions of this group, and I'm in the Atlanta one. But since Steven lived in Florida, I didn't have access to the Fort Lauderdale chapter. I posted in the Atlanta group asking if anyone could help me post in the Florida version. Within 10 minutes, a girl volunteered. "Send me his pics," she said. "I'll post and see what comes up." Now, this group is a mixed bag. Some of the women are ride or dies, and some are not. But the girl who helped me, she was a real one. Not even 15 minutes later, she replied, "Girl, I found something." Turns out, Steven had a history. A woman in the Fort Lauderdale group had posted about him a few weeks earlier. Same pattern. He contacted her, hyped up a date, said he'd take her to a nice spot, made big romantic promises, and then ghosted her at the last minute. Another woman commented with a nearly identical story. So clearly, this was his thing. He went from woman to woman, love bombing them, making them feel special, and then vanishing once they showed real interest. It was like he got off on the power trip. Any desire I had to meet him was gone. I ghosted him. I didn't owe him an explanation. He was playing games, and I wasn't going to be another one of his stories. Fast forward a month and a half later. Out of nowhere, I get a text from an unknown number. "Hey, I just want to know what happened." It was Steven. He said he saw some of my TikToks and felt even more curious about why I stopped talking to him. Apparently, he hadn't seen the one about him, which, thank goodness, because I did not hold back in that one. I was caught off guard. Should I lie and say I got busy? Should I tell him the truth, that I knew about his little Airbnb and ghost routine? I went with a vague excuse. "Sorry, I got super busy. It just wasn't the right time for me." He replied fast. "I'll be honest, I still want to get to know you." I hesitated. The logical part of me was screaming, "No, don't do it." But another part of me, the part that still believes in giving people second chances, was like, maybe he changed. So I told him I'd be open to that. Within hours, he was already planning another trip. "Looks like I'll be in Atlanta soon. What week works for you?" And that's when I should have known. The moment I gave him the green light, he started the cycle again. But this time, it was different. This time, he ghosted me before even sending the Airbnb screenshot. No explanations. Just silence. He got his revenge. I sat there, staring at my phone, not even hurt, just annoyed. It was like he waited for me to come back just so he could pull the same move I avoided the first time. Maybe he hated that I ghosted him. Maybe he wanted to feel like he had the upper hand. Or maybe, just maybe, he wanted me to make a TikTok about him again because during one of our earlier talks, he joked, "Maybe I'll make it onto your page someday." Congratulations, Steven. You made it. But you'll never see it because I blocked you. And let's be clear, it wasn't the ghosting that upset me. It was the manipulation. The emotional bait and switch. The endless cycle of, "I like you, I'm coming to see you, oh wait, never mind." Men like Steven treat emotional connection like a game. They test your interest, give you just enough to keep you curious, and then disappear the moment you reciprocate. They crave control, not companionship. I don't know if he ever booked any Airbnbs. I don't know if he ever actually visited any of the women he spoke to. But I do know this, he was never interested in a relationship. He was interested in the performance. The scarier part, he was good at it. He knew how to say just enough to make you feel chosen. Special. Seen. And when you start to believe it, he pulls the rug out from under you. I've since talked to other women who had similar experiences with men like Steven. Different names, same story. It's a pattern, and it's exhausting. But I learned something from it. I learned that intuition is powerful. The moment I felt something was off, I was right. I learned that cautious optimism can be dangerous when it overrides common sense. And I learned that men who are too intense too soon usually have something to hide. Stephen taught me that, unintentionally, but he did. So if you're reading this and someone comes on strong right out the gate, booking trips, making promises, telling you you're different than the others, pause. Watch. Listen. Because if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Stephen may have gotten the last ghost in, but I got the last word. And the TikTok views. It was a rainy night, of course it was. The kind of rain that makes the air thick and everything feel just a little more cinematic. We'd gone out for drinks, nothing fancy. Just a bar near his place. When I tried to call an Uber home, they kept canceling. Typical big city storm problems. He noticed me getting frustrated and offered a solution. "Oh, I live just down the street," he said. "You can just come hang out for a bit until your Uber situation gets better." Up until that point, he had seemed completely normal, albeit quiet. So I hesitated, but ultimately said yes. I figured we'd sit on his couch, maybe watch a movie, maybe just wait until the storm passed. He didn't give off any creepy vibes, or at least, I didn't think so at the time. That changed the moment we walked into his apartment. The first thing I noticed, before I even had a chance to take off my coat, was the massive, antique-looking weapon mounted on his wall. A musket, an actual 1700s-era musket, encased in a display above his television. You know, the kind of weapon that required gunpowder and a metal ball, and probably took a full minute to reload. A literal museum piece. I stared at it, wide-eyed, and he noticed. "Yeah," he said with a shrug and a grin. "I guess you could say I'm a war guy." Now let me pause here. There's a difference between someone who enjoys history and someone who identifies as a war guy. I like history. I love a well-researched documentary. I've rewatched John Green's Crash Course History series more times than I care to admit. But this was different. The musket wasn't the only relic. Surrounding it were oil paintings of battlefields. Not stylized or abstract, either. These were vivid, detailed depictions of war. Explosions, men on horseback, bayonets. The kind of paintings you'd see in the entryway of a Civil War reenactor's home. Or maybe a haunted battlefield museum. Still, I tried to play it cool. Maybe he's just really into military history, I told myself. Maybe he's a collector. Eccentric, but harmless. Then I saw the coffee table. On it was a neat stack of books. I glanced over, curious. Maybe they were history books, biographies, maybe something about ancient civilizations. Nope. They were all about serial killers. Ted Bundy. Ed Gein. A heavy leather-bound book with a title that just read The Psychology of Murder. You might think I'm exaggerating for effect, but I swear to you, this stack looked like something you'd find in a true crime podcast host's private library, or the evidence locker of a cold case unit. I laughed nervously, trying to keep things light. "You're really into true crime, huh?" He smiled. "Yeah, I just think it's fascinating. Now listen. I get it. True crime is a popular genre. I've watched Mindhunter. I've listened to Serial. But there's a difference between being casually interested and decorating your living room like a forensic exhibit." Something in my stomach twisted. My intuition was starting to speak up, whispering, "This isn't good. You need to leave." But I tried to ignore it. I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to overreact. I didn't want to be that girl who assumes the worst just because a guy's into weird stuff. Then his phone rang. He looked down at the screen, his entire demeanor shifting. "Ugh," he muttered. "It's my dumbass ex-girlfriend. I was hoping she wouldn't make this mistake again." I raised an eyebrow. "What mistake? She knows what's going to happen if she keeps calling me." He said it like it was a threat, like it was obvious, like I should understand what's going to happen meant. And in that moment, something in me snapped awake. I was not safe. I was in the apartment of a man I barely knew, surrounded by weapons and murder books, while a storm raged outside. I had no ride home. I didn't even know exactly where I was. I did what any terrified woman would do. I texted my sister. "Emergency. Call me. Pretend something happened. I need to leave now." Within 2 minutes, my phone rang. I picked up with an Oscar-worthy performance. "Oh my God. What? Are you okay? Where are you?" "Yeah, no, I'll come right now. Stay there. I'm on my way." I turned to him. "I'm so sorry. My sister's dog got out and she's freaking out. I have to go help her." He narrowed his eyes. "Are you sure you have to go now?" "Yes," I said, grabbing my bag. "She's in a panic." His expression changed again. His face hardened, his eyes went cold. Well, he said, voice low and flat, I can't let you leave this soon now, can I? I froze. My heart dropped. I thought, this is it. I'm going to die in this apartment. I'm going to be a true crime podcast episode. But before I could react, he smiled. Kidding. I forced a laugh. Oh my God, you got me. You should be a comedian. He didn't laugh. I said something about my sister already being outside, opened the door, and left as quickly as I could. But it wasn't over. As I waited for the elevator, I remembered what he said. I hope the elevator's working so you can make it out. What the hell did that mean? Was someone waiting for me? I bolted for the stairs. I'm not athletic, but I flew down those flights like I was being chased. And for all I knew, I was. Then I made another mistake. I stopped on a random floor to catch my breath and ran into an old man. A resident, I assumed. He seemed nice enough at first, asking if I was okay if I lived there. I told him I was visiting a friend and waiting for my ride. Then he got too close. Why don't you come wait in my apartment, he said, reaching for my arm. I yanked away and ran, again, this time back to the staircase. 2 men. 2 creeps. 1 night. I finally made it to the lobby, drenched in sweat, heart racing. My sister had really shown up by then. I jumped into her car and screamed, drive. Just go. I'll explain later. And I did. I told her everything. The musket. The murder books. The ex-girlfriend. The threat. The other creepy guy. To this day, I don't remember his last name. I deleted the app. Blocked the number. But the memory lingers. So here's my advice. If you ever walk into someone's apartment and see a weapon on the wall, leave. If they own more books about serial killers than actual furniture, leave. If they make vague threats about exes and then say, just kidding, leave. And if your intuition tells you to run, don't wait. Run. If you've ever made the mistake of romanticizing a dating app match based on looks alone, this story is for you. And if you've ever ignored red flags loud enough to shatter glass, well, same hat. This is the story of how I met a man who looked like Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Tell Me Lies, thought I was getting a fairy tale romance, and instead found myself in a psychological horror film with a deeply unsettling twist. Let's call him Tony. That's not his real name, but it fits the role he played in my life. A charming, seemingly perfect man who unraveled faster than a cheap sweater in a washing machine. We met on Hinge, the dating app known for its designed to be deleted motto. I was newly divorced, vulnerable, and admittedly not making the best decisions. My judgment was still foggy from the emotional aftermath of my marriage ending, and I was craving connection, validation, anything that made me feel wanted. Tony was gorgeous. He had that golden boy look, tousled hair, striking cheekbones, a smile that could melt steel. The first time I saw his picture, I audibly gasped. He looked like he'd walked off a television set and into my inbox. And when he messaged me, he wasn't just attractive, he was attentive, articulate, and warm. We talked for a couple of weeks before making plans to meet in person. The first red flag? He offered to drive 2 hours just to take me on our first date. Now, some might find that romantic, but something about it felt intense. Still, I told myself, maybe this is what effort looks like. So I agreed. In a moment of impulsivity and loneliness, I even invited him to spend the night after the date. Something I'd never normally do, but at the time, I wasn't thinking clearly. I was still in the emotional rubble of my past life. The night of the date, I opened the door and there he was, flowers in hand, bounding up the stairs like a man in love. He hugged me tightly and said, "I'm so excited to finally see you." It felt genuine. I thought, maybe this is the start of something amazing. Dinner was at a beautiful restaurant. He drove a luxury car, wore a well-fitted shirt, and ordered confidently off the menu. He asked questions, real questions. He wanted to know about my passions, including my obsession with neuroplasticity. Most men don't want to talk about brain rewiring, but he leaned in, fascinated. He told me he'd just left the military, was pursuing a master's degree, and wanted to eventually work in a field that helped people. He seemed grounded, ambitious, and kind. He even talked about growing up on a farm, being homeschooled with his siblings. There was something almost innocent about it. After the date, we went back to my place. He stayed the night, respectfully, and we made plans for our second date before he even left the next morning. He texted me on the drive home, saying how much he enjoyed our time together. But here's the thing, I couldn't shake this gnawing feeling in my stomach. My intuition, which I've learned over the years to trust, was screaming at me. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. He hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, he had done everything right. But something in me was on alert. Despite the internal alarms, I agreed to the second date. This time I would drive to his town, near Eastern Carolina University. He had planned a fun, casual night, mini golf, a quirky hot dog joint, and a nightcap at his place. Again, it all seemed sweet, thoughtful. When I arrived, I tried to shake the unease. We had fun playing mini golf. He made me laugh. He touched my arm in that, I'm into you kind of way. But then, at dinner, he said something that made my skin crawl. You know, he said casually, you look just like my cousin. I laughed awkwardly, waiting for the punchline. No, seriously, he continued, pulling out his phone. She's hot though. He showed me a picture. Reader, I looked exactly like her. That was the moment a door in my brain opened, and a very loud voice screamed, "Run." But I didn't. I froze. I told myself it was just a weird comment. People make weird comments. Maybe he was just bad at small talk. We went back to his place, or rather, a hotel, since he had a roommate. He had brought items. Bedroom items. Not the fun kind. The kind that made me wonder who he thought I was. When he tried to initiate things, I shut it down. It was too much, too fast, and frankly I was now scared. We ended up talking instead. At first, it was just typical late-night date stuff, family childhood dreams. But then he dropped the bomb. He told me, without flinching, that he and his sister had been curious when they were kids. I thought, surely he means like, they snuck peeks at each other when they were 5. Kids are weird. That's not great, but it's explainable. No. He went into detail. Horrific, graphic detail. From grade school to adulthood. It was not a phase. It was a relationship. I was frozen in place. My heart pounded in my ears. I was 2 hours from home, slightly buzzed, in a hotel room with a man who just confessed to prolonged incest. I did what any woman would do in that moment. I pretended to be calm. I played therapist. I asked careful, neutral questions. I made sympathetic faces. I tried to keep the panic from showing in my eyes. All the while, I was calculating. How fast could I get to the door? How quickly could I get in my car and drive away? Could I fake sleep and sneak out? Eventually we fell asleep. Or, I pretended to. The next morning, I left as soon as I could. He texted me immediately. I had so much fun. I really like you. I responded politely, telling him I didn't think we were compatible, citing spiritual differences. I said I needed someone who had a strong relationship with God. He replied with a vague, "Yeah, I get that. I need someone who's into the same things I am." Sir, most people are not into what you're into. This story didn't start out badly. In fact, it started like the kind of date that makes you text your friends mid-bathroom break like, "Girl, he's fine. He opens doors. He listens. I think I like him." We set up a date for a Friday night. Dinner and drinks. Simple. I didn't expect anything more than good conversation and the possibility of a second date. But he showed up and wow. Tall. Clean cut. Beautiful skin. Smelled like heaven and confidence. I was already texting the group chat like, "Update, if I go missing, check his apartment first." We sat down at this little wine bar he picked. Dim lights, jazz playing softly in the background, candles on the table. He asked me what I liked before ordering a bottle. He poured my glass first. He listened without interrupting. He laughed at my jokes. He told me about his job, his family, how he just moved into a new place, and was trying to figure out how to hang art without making a million holes in the wall. It was easy. Effortless. I felt relaxed. Seen. Wanted. Dinner turned into drinks. Drinks turned into him walking me to my car. And when he asked if I wanted to come back to his place, no pressure, just to hang out a bit longer, I paused for a second. And then I said yes. Because I liked him. I felt safe. I felt curious. And honestly, I hadn't had that in a long time. His apartment was exactly what I expected. Clean, minimal, cozy. He had plants. Art on the walls. A vinyl player in the corner. He offered me water, took my coat, and put on music that wasn't trying too hard, like he actually liked it, not like he curated a playlist called Netflix and Chill Vibes Volume 4. We sat on the couch, talked more. He scooted closer. We kissed. Slowly. Softly. And it was good. Like play with your hair good. Like forehead touching good. The kind of kissing that makes you forget where you are. His hands moved to my waist. Mine to his neck. He whispered something in my ear that made me laugh, and then pause. Because I could feel where this was going. I pulled back just for a second, looking at him. He looked back at me, and for the first time all night, he seemed nervous. Not bashful, not unsure, but nervous, like something was sitting heavy in his chest. He exhaled. I need to tell you something before this goes any further. My heart did that thing where it skips, then slams hard. I wasn't sure what was coming, an X, a weird kink, by the way, I don't believe in monogamy. What he said next spun the room sideways. I'm HIV positive. I just blinked. He said it quietly, clearly, like he'd practiced it before, like he'd said it to other women, and maybe not all of them had stayed. I've been undetectable for 4 years, he added quickly. I take my meds every day. I haven't missed a dose. I'm healthy. I've been open with every partner. I just didn't want to drop that on you at dinner. I sat there frozen. Not because I thought he was dangerous. Not because I was judging him. But because I felt caught. Like the moment had shifted from romantic to deeply serious without warning. And I didn't know what to do. I nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. He looked relieved. But also watched me, waiting to see if I'd run. I had to be honest. I appreciate you being honest, I said. I really do. But I wish you'd told me sooner. Like, before we got here. He nodded. I know. I just didn't want to scare you off. Most people don't give me a chance once they know. And that part broke my heart a little. Because here he was, kind, smart, funny, attractive, and carrying something that made people walk away before they even got to see who he was. And I got it. I did. But I also had to honor how I felt in that moment. I just need a second, I said. He nodded, gave me space, handed me my water, let me sit in silence without pushing. I thought about how good the night had felt, how rare it was to connect with someone in a way that felt real. And I thought about how little I actually knew about HIV, about what it meant to be undetectable, about how fear plays tricks on you when you don't have the facts. Because the truth is, he wasn't unsafe. He wasn't irresponsible. He was doing everything right. But this was still new to me, still heavy, and I couldn't pretend I was okay just to make him feel better. We didn't sleep together that night. We curled up on the couch and watched an episode of something neither of us paid attention to. I left a little while later. He walked me to my car again, kissed me on the forehead, said, "Whatever you decide, thank you for tonight." And I drove home with a lot on my mind. I didn't block him. I didn't ghost him. We talked the next day, and the next. I did my research. I asked questions. I read up on you equals you, undetectable equals untransmittable. I sat with my feelings. I talked to friends. I thought about what it actually meant to be with someone living with HIV in 2024. But I also thought about how I felt in that moment, how caught off guard I was, how much I wanted to be able to make an informed decision before I was halfway undressed and emotionally attached. In the end, I didn't keep seeing him, not because he was HIV positive, but because he waited too long to tell me, because I believe in informed intimacy, in consent that includes everything. And while I understood his fear, his exhaustion, even, I couldn't ignore the fact that I was almost in a situation I hadn't fully agreed to. It was a date that started with butterflies and ended with boundaries. And I learned a lot. About stigma. About disclosure. About the difference between fear and fact. But mostly, I learned to trust that little voice in me that says, pause. Ask. Think. Because sometimes the date isn't bad. Sometimes the person is wonderful. But timing is everything. So I'd been talking to this guy on Hinge for about a week. I have to say he was sexy. We moved from Hinge to texting after a few days, which is usually where things go downhill, but surprisingly he kept the same energy. Still cute, still funny, still acting like he was interested. So when he asked to meet up for dinner, I was like, alright, bet. Let's do it. He chose the place. I'd never been there before, but I looked it up and it was cute. Mid-tier trendy. Like, not fast food, but also not fancy enough to make you question if you can afford dessert. So I was like, perfect. I'll throw on a cute little outfit, something flirty but casual. You know, the kind of outfit that says, I'm fun, but I didn't dress for you, I dressed for the aesthetic. Anyway, he picked 7:30. Then, red flag number 1, he texted me that afternoon like, hey, I'm working late, might not get there till like right before 8. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But in my head I was thinking, you better not be on some flaky __, I swear. But I let it slide. I'm getting ready, feeling cute, music playing, doing my little pre-date dance in the mirror. And then I get a text from him. He says, just a heads up, I have to work tomorrow morning. Friday night. Okay, so, Is that a subtle way of saying you don't want to go out anymore? Or are you trying to set the expectation that this isn't turning into a sleepover situation? Which, like, okay, fine. I wasn't planning on jumping your bones, but thanks for clarifying. So I reply like, totally fine. Still good for tonight? And he says, yes, of course. Word for word. Yes, of course. So I'm like, okay, cool. We're still on. Now, the parking situation at this restaurant is apparently kind of trash. He tells me to park across the street at the McDonald's. Weird, but okay. I confirm with him like, hey, are you parking there too? And he says, yeah. I get there like 7:55. I text him, hey, I'm here, let me know when you are and I'll walk across. His reply, I'm here if you like walk across. If I like walk across? What does that even mean? Like, was that sarcasm? Passive aggressive? Are you here or not? I'm literally sitting in the car like, sir, I have heels on. I'm not about to play Marco Polo across this parking lot. But whatever. I gather myself, grab my purse, and walk across. I get to the entrance. I text him, okay, I'm at the front. Nothing. 10 minutes go by. 10 whole minutes. I'm standing there, people walking in and out, and I'm just posted up like a decorative plant. I text again. Hey, am I at the wrong spot? No response. iMessage doesn't even deliver. That little blue bubble goes green. I'm like, oh, no you didn't. I check Hinge. Gone. Unmatched. Poof. Like I was never there. At this point, I'm standing on the sidewalk, dressed like a Pinterest board, and realizing I've been stood up. Not just ghosted. Not just flaked on. But full on, publicly humiliated, standing alone at the date location ghosted. I call my friend immediately. Like, I don't even blink. I just hit FaceTime and say, I know you're not gonna believe this, __. She answers and I tell her everything. She's like, no way. Are you sure? And I'm like, yes girl, I'm at the entrance. I'm literally at the door, and this man just straight up vanished. And then, because I'm petty and my friend is ride or die, she calls him from her number. And guess what? It goes through. Her messages deliver. He didn't block her. Just me. She starts texting him like, why would you stand up my friend? She got dressed. She shaved. Do you know what it takes for a woman to shave her legs on a Friday night? And I'm in the background yelling, tell him I moisturized with the fancy lotion. But he doesn't respond. Just leaves her on read. I go back to my car, sit there in silence for a second, and then it hits me. Was he even there? Or did he just make me show up so he could ghost me on purpose? Like, was this some kind of weird humiliation kink? Is that a thing? Because listen, the level of detail he gave me, the parking instructions, the confirmation texts, the yes of course, it was giving intention. Like he wanted me to be there. Like he wanted me to show up and get embarrassed. And then it got worse. I started thinking, what if he was watching me? What if he was sitting in his car somewhere nearby, watching me stand at the entrance, waiting for the moment I realized I'd been stood up? That thought made my skin crawl. Like, I don't know what's worse, the fact that he ghosted me, or the idea that he might have been watching me while he did it. I drove home in silence. No music, just vibes. And by vibes, I mean a mix of rage, shame, and the kind of heartbreak that only comes from being fully prepared to meet someone who didn't even have the decency to cancel. And the thing is, I'm 27. I'm not new to dating. I've had my heart broken, I've been ghosted before. But this was a new flavor of disrespect. This was a cold ghost. Like Casper could never. I got home, washed my face, and stared at myself in the mirror like, you let a man in joggers do this to you. And that was the moment I deleted Hinge. Not temporarily. Not, I'll re-download it in a week. No, I deleted it like it owed me money. Because if this is what we're doing now, inviting women out, confirming the time and place, and then ghosting them on arrival, I want no part of this Hunger Games dating scene. Thank you very much. When I agreed to meet him for breakfast, I didn't think twice. He had seemed harmless enough. We'd only been talking for a few days, texting back and forth after he stopped me outside a venue I'd performed at. He was polite, enthusiastic, maybe a little too eager, but I brushed it off. After all, it's nice when someone seems genuinely interested these days. He asked if I wanted to grab something to eat. I said sure, and I picked a place close to my apartment. I didn't want to drive far, and besides, I figured if it all went sideways, I could just walk back home. That decision may have saved my life. The spot we chose was a small, cozy breakfast joint. I got there first and picked a booth. It was still early, so the place wasn't packed. Quiet, bright, and completely unassuming. He messaged me, "I'm pulling up." I looked up a few minutes later and saw him walking in. Phone in hand, talking to someone, gesturing, laughing loudly. I noticed immediately that he had our messages open. I could see the preview screen. Okay, I thought. Weird, but maybe he was just rereading what I'd said about where I was sitting. He sat down, still talking, and I finally got a full view of him. Same guy from the day he approached me, but he looked different. More intense. Something about the way he scanned the room, like he was checking for exits, made me uneasy. He finally put his phone down on the table. That's when I noticed the profile photo on his screen. It was me, but not a picture I recognized. Not one I'd posted on Instagram. It looked like a freeze frame from one of my YouTube videos. I blinked, leaned in slightly, and tried not to show that I was freaking out internally. "Is that your wallpaper?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. He laughed. "Yeah, you looked cute in that video." I smiled politely, but inside my stomach dropped. I had never sent him my YouTube. I hadn't even mentioned it. Still, I didn't run. I didn't cause a scene. I just noted it. Mental tally, red flag number 1. After we finished eating, he suggested we go back to his place to hang out. Nothing serious, just chill. I hesitated, but again, I ignored the discomfort. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to seem dramatic. Maybe I was still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. His apartment wasn't far. We walked there. The moment I stepped inside, everything felt wrong. It wasn't anything obvious at first. Just off. The lighting was dim for that time of day. The windows were closed. There were no personal touches, no photos, no clutter, no warmth. It felt like a showroom, like a place that was lived in, but not lived with. Then I saw the cameras. Not one, not two, multiple. Mounted in corners, perched on shelves. But not normal security cameras. These were indoor Ring doorbell cameras. The kind you usually put outside your front door. He had them placed in almost every room. I asked about them casually. "You record inside too?" He shrugged. "You can never be too careful." Red flag number 2. I asked if I could see the rest of the place. Playful tone, but I meant it. I wanted to see where I was. What doors were locked. What windows were shut. Where my exits were. He said sure. Go ahead, look around. So I did. His bedroom was sterile. White walls, black bedding, a TV mounted on the wall. Nothing personal. But what caught my eye were the awards hanging up, plaques, frames, certificates, and all of them had a name that wasn't the one he gave me. I stared for a few seconds, then turned around. "That your real name?" I asked, half joking. He smiled. "Yeah, I go by both." I knew he was lying. Red flag number 3. He sat down on the couch and started scrolling through photos, showing me pictures of himself with long hair, back when he had locks. "Thinking of growing them out again," he said. Then he passed me his phone. "Here, look." I took it, and something inside me said, "Swipe. Go through the albums. Now." So I did. And that's when I saw them. Screenshots of my Instagram. My Facebook. My YouTube. Images I'd never sent him. Captions circled. Comments highlighted. My profile pages saved as screenshots. Photos of me that I hadn't even posted recently. He'd found them. Saved them. Cataloged them. I kept scrolling. And then I saw the folders. Each one labeled with a different name. All male names. Dozens of them. Inside, pictures of young men. Surveillance footage. Some of them in compromising situations. Some of them clearly unaware they were being recorded. Shirtless. Some fully naked. All of it filmed from the same kind of Ring cameras I'd seen around the apartment. My fingers froze. I looked up at him. He was watching me. "What are you looking at?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just turned the screen toward him, showing him one of the videos. He blinked. "Oh, that's one of the boys I mentor." I stared at him. That's a crazy way to mentor someone. He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Suddenly his tone changed. "You don't trust me?" I stood up. "I don't know you." I walked around the apartment, collecting my things. I needed to go. Now. He tried to play it off. "You're being dramatic." I didn't respond. I was already planning my exit. He disappeared into his room for a second, saying he needed to grab something. I waited, then realized he hadn't gone into the bathroom like he said. He was in his bedroom. With his phone. I peeked around the corner. He was logging into WhatsApp. I don't know who he was contacting. I didn't wait to find out. I grabbed my bag and walked calmly to the door. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I just opened it and stepped outside. And then I ran. Down the hall. Down the stairs. Out the building. I didn't look back. I didn't tell anyone where I was going that morning. No one knew I was with him. I hadn't shared my location. I hadn't sent a just-in-case text. If something had happened to me, no one would have known where to start. I got lucky. That's not an exaggeration. That's not a dramatic spin. That's the truth. I got out of that apartment before something could happen. But I don't know how many others didn't. I don't know how many names were in those folders. I don't know how many boys, young men, he lured in with flattery and fake sweetness and a camera hiding in the corner. I met this guy online, of course. Where else? He was charming in messages, responsive, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. And I'm not going to lie, he was attractive. Not just in a he's cute kind of way, but in a I might actually get butterflies if this works out kind of way. I hadn't felt that excited about someone in a long time. So when he asked me out, I said yes without hesitation. He picked a trendy restaurant in the city, one of those slightly upscale places where the menu is all in lowercase and nothing has prices listed. You know the type. I'd never been there before, but I'd heard good things. I got dressed up, did my hair, beat my face like I was going to prom, and walked in feeling hopeful. When he arrived, everything seemed fine at first. We hugged hello, sat down, and started chatting. But almost immediately, I noticed something was off. He was talking a little too fast, laughing a little too loud. At first, I chalked it up to nerves. I mean, who hasn't had a quick drink to loosen up before a date? But then the drinks menu came, and that's when things got weird. He opened it up, scanned it for 2 seconds, and then said loudly, "Oh my God, they have a drink called Paper Planes." Like the MIA song. I laughed politely. Yeah, like the song. But before I could even glance at the cocktail list, he started singing. Not humming. Not quietly mouthing the lyrics. Full volume singing. In the middle of this nice, dimly lit restaurant. If you catch me at the border, I got visas in my name. I froze. I looked around. People were staring. The bartender stopped mid-pour. A couple at a nearby table turned all the way around. And he just kept going. Like he was auditioning for a musical version of Top Chef. I leaned in and whispered, "Hey, maybe save the karaoke for, like, karaoke?" He finally stopped, laughed like it was no big deal, and said, "I just love that song." Cool. Great. Love that for you. Can we not get kicked out before the appetizers? I tried to shrug it off. We moved on. He asked if I had any pets, which I thought was a sweet question. I told him about my cat, my baby. I'm a full-on cat mom. I showed him a picture and started telling him about how she curls up on my pillow like she owns the place. That's when he made a face. Not a subtle one. A full-on grimace. "You have a cat?" he said, like I'd just confessed to having a raccoon in my kitchen. I nodded, a little confused. "Yeah, she's adorable." "Cats are disgusting," he said. Just flat out. "They lick themselves and then get in the litter box. It's gross. And the smell. I can't stand it. I don't know how people live with that." I blinked. "Well, I mean, I keep her clean. And the litter box is." "No offense," he interrupted, "but cats just carry diseases. I saw this documentary about it. I'd never date someone who let a cat sleep in their bed." "Okay." I took a sip of water. Deep breaths. Maybe he just has a strong opinion. Maybe he got scratched as a kid. Whatever. I wasn't going to let it ruin the night. But it was already ruined. I just didn't know it yet. We moved on from the cat slander, and eventually the server came back to ask if we were ready to order. I started to speak, but he cut me off. "I got it," he said to the server, like he was making some grand romantic gesture. I figured maybe he'd ask me what I wanted. Nope. He just started ordering. Like passionately ordering. "We'll start with the seafood tower. Then the Wagyu steak rare. Add the bone marrow toast. And a bottle of the Napa Cab." Sir?" I sat there stunned. He ordered like he was feeding a football team. And not once did he ask me what I liked. Not once did he even glance at me to see if I was okay with it. Just boom, boom, boom. Rattled off a gourmet feast like he was Gordon Ramsay. Now's probably a good time to mention, I don't eat shellfish. I don't eat oysters. Or crab. Or lobster. Basically, the entire seafood tower was a no-go for me. The steak? I like mine medium well. Bone marrow toast? Miss me with that. So when the food came, and he started digging in like he hadn't eaten in a week, I just kind of sat there, picking at the bread, sipping wine, watching him inhale $500 worth of food like it was a backyard cookout. At one point he looked up, mouth full, and said, Why aren't you eating? I smiled awkwardly. Oh, I'm not really into shellfish. But don't worry, enjoy it. He waved his hand like, oh, I'll order you something. Then he turned back to the server and said, add the A5 Wagyu for her. Now, I'm not gonna lie. That steak is expensive. Like rent level expensive. I was shocked, but also a little relieved. At least I'd have something to eat. The steak comes. He slices into it, takes a bite, and then proceeds to eat the entire thing. I'm not kidding. The entire steak. He left me 2 crispy end pieces. Like the little burnt corners. That was it. Like it was a gift. At that point, I was over it. But I figured I'd ride it out. I was dressed up, already out, and honestly, I was already planning my post-date in-and-out run. I just needed to get through the next 30 minutes. But oh no, the universe had other plans. At one point, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. Not to escape, yet, but to regroup. Maybe text a friend. Maybe order an Uber. As I'm walking down the hall, this guy, super cute, very polite, passes me and says, hey, I'm sorry to be forward, but you look like you're on a date you don't want to be on. You okay? I laughed, kind of stunned. Yeah, kind of. We exchanged a couple of words, just small talk, honestly, but nothing wild. But suddenly, I see the color drain from his face. He's looking past me, eyes wide. I turn around. My date had followed me. He was standing there, glaring, arms crossed. Then he walks up, wraps his arm around my waist, pulls me into his chest, and whispers in my ear, I thought you said you were going to the bathroom. I shoved him off me. Do not touch me. Are you serious right now? The other guy backs up like, whoa, are you okay? I nod. I'm leaving. My date starts making a scene. Oh, so you're just gonna talk to some random dude in the hallway? I didn't even respond. I walked straight to the elevator, heart pounding. He followed me halfway before turning back toward the table, still yelling. I stopped by the hostess stand. Hey, can you make sure he doesn't follow me? I'm calling an Uber. The hostess looked concerned but nodded. Of course. We'll keep him here. I got to the elevator, tears stinging the corners of my eyes, not because I was sad, but because I was furious, humiliated, shaken. As the elevator doors closed, I saw him walking out of the restaurant, looking around like he was hunting for me. I begged the Uber driver, please go. Now. He hit the gas. I watched the restaurant disappear in the rearview mirror, and I exhaled for what felt like the first time all night. He blew up my phone. Calls. Texts. Instagram DMs. I didn't answer a single one. The things he said were so nasty, so aggressive. He called me names I wouldn't repeat to my worst enemy. I blocked him everywhere. Reported him on the app. Deleted the app. Sat in silence for a while. And then, I went to In-N-Out. Because if I was going to be traumatized, at least I could do it with a double-double and a side of fries. So I met this guy on a dating app. I won't say which one because honestly, they're all starting to blend together. But he seemed decent. He asked me out for dinner, and I said yes. I figured, why not? I was in the mood to get dressed up, eat something that wasn't microwaved, and maybe, just maybe, have a decent conversation with a man who didn't turn it into a therapy session or a TED Talk. Spoiler, I was too optimistic. We agreed to meet at this little spot downtown. Classy enough to feel like a real date, but casual enough to not feel like we were trying too hard. I picked out a cute outfit, not too much, but definitely a serve. Did my makeup, spritzed on perfume, and gave myself a pep talk in the mirror like, you never know, girl. This might be the one. As soon as I pulled into the parking lot, though, my gut started whispering, turn around. I should have listened. Hindsight is a loud, smug little voice, isn't it? So I show up, and we meet outside. He gives me a quick once-over and says something like, oh wow, okay, you came dressed. I laughed awkwardly. Yeah, I figured I'd make a little effort. He nodded, but not in a you look great kind of way. More like he was surprised I looked better than he expected. Red flag number 1. As we're walking in, this girl walks past us, gorgeous, glowing, just minding her business, and she compliments me. She goes, you look amazing, by the way. Which, by the way, is the kind of thing that makes your night. Compliments from other women hit different. I smiled, told her she looked amazing too, and turned back to my date. His whole vibe shifted. He looked at me like I'd just committed a crime. I could feel the energy shift immediately. His jaw was tight, he suddenly got quiet, and he gave me this look like, bad, _ where? With you. Red flag number 2. We sit down, and I swear to you, from that moment on, this man did not stop talking. Like, not even to breathe. I don't think I said more than 5 full sentences the entire night. He launched into this monologue about all the bad, __, he's dated. Like I was supposed to be impressed? He's listing them off like he's reading a Yelp review. Yeah, I dated this one girl in the military. She was so fine. Then there was this one chick who was a model. Oh, and this other one? She used to fly me out. I'm sitting there sipping water thinking, so if all these women were so amazing, why are you here with me eating this overpriced chicken? I interrupted him, gently, just trying to steer the conversation somewhere mutual. So what are you looking for now? He waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. I'm a good man. I'm embedded in God. I just want a good woman. Now I love God. Let's start there. I was raised in church, I pray, I believe in a higher power. But I also know that just because someone says they love God doesn't mean they're a good person. I've met too many men of God who couldn't spell accountability if you spotted them the first 10 letters. So I nodded, but I wasn't sold. He kept talking. About how he used to be broke, but this woman held him down. About how he's changed. About how no woman has ever left a good man. I swear, he was trying to convince himself more than me. Then, out of nowhere, he says, I'd love to see you without makeup. Excuse me? Let me just say this. I look like me with and without makeup. I don't wear it to hide. I wear it because I enjoy it. I've got great skin. But it wasn't about that. It was the fact that he said it like it was some kind of test. Like, let me see the real you. I smiled politely. I look the same. He goes, I can tell you're really into fashion and makeup and stuff. I can't afford to upgrade my wardrobe though, just being honest. Sir, can you afford this date? Because the way you're talking, I'm starting to think you're hoping I'll cover the bill. And at this point, I wouldn't even be mad. I just wanted to leave. Then he starts telling me he lives in a single room. Not a 1-bedroom, not a studio. A room. No kitchen. He says it like it's no big deal. And listen, I'm not trying to shame anyone. We've all been through things. But if you're living like that, maybe don't spend an entire date bragging about how many bad __. You've dated when you can't even cook a frozen pizza in your place. I asked gently, does it at least have a shower? He laughed. Yeah. It's got a shower. Cool. Just checking. At some point, he tried to pivot. He said, you're a good woman. I can tell. I said, I never said that. Don't assume. He fumbled. I just mean, I like you. I think you're cool. I want to get to know you. I blinked. You don't know anything about me. And that's the thing. People say they like you, but they really just like the idea of you. The version they've made up in their heads. And when you don't match that fantasy, they get weird. I finally asked, if you're such a good man, why hasn't it worked out with anyone else? He stared at me stunned, like no one had ever asked him that before. You're right, he said sheepishly. And for a moment, I felt bad. But only for a moment. There was a couple sitting behind us, black couple, beautiful, clearly on a real date, and they were stifling laughter. I don't know if they were laughing at him or just at the situation, but I was mortified. He was talking so loudly, so nonstop, that the whole restaurant could hear him. And still, he wouldn't shut up. He talked over me every time I opened my mouth. He interrupted every thought. He steamrolled every sentence. I was so irritated I started mentally making a grocery list in my head just to tune him out. By the time the check came, I had already decided, I'm never doing this again. Not with him. Not with any app dude for a long time. I needed a break from this chaos. He offered to walk me to my car. I said no thanks. As I drove away, I looked at myself in the rearview mirror and said, girl, you need to start listening to that gut of yours. Because the moment I pulled into that parking lot, I knew, and I ignored it. Never again. I just got home from what might be the worst date I've ever been on, and that's saying a lot, because I've had my fair share of questionable, awkward, and downright weird dating experiences. But this one takes the cake. I'm not even mad in a haha that was wild way. I'm livid. I'm pacing around my apartment with my jacket still on, ranting to my cat, and trying to decide whether to delete every single dating app on my phone for good. Spoiler alert, I probably will. Let me backtrack and tell you everything from the top. This was our second date. Second. Not 10th. Not, we've been seeing each other for a few months. No. Date number 2. The first one had gone well enough. Nothing special, but he seemed nice. Polite. Funny in a dad joke kind of way. And I'm out here trying to be open, you know? I'm tired of writing people off too quickly. So when he asked me out again, I said yes. Now here's where things start to slide downhill. He told me he was working late and wouldn't be free until around 10 p.m. That's already pushing it for me. I'm a let's grab a drink after work kind of girl, not a let me start getting ready at 9:31. But again, I'm trying to be flexible. Compromise. So I agree. I even rearranged my evening, skipped my usual wind-down routine, and put on real clothes, like jeans, not just leggings. That's commitment. We meet up at a local place that he picked. It's not fancy, but it's not cheap either. Think mid-range, nice lighting, shareable plates, craft beer kind of spot. I get there first, which is normal. I usually like being early so I can scope the place out. When he walks in, he gives me this little nod. Not a hug, not a, hey, good to see you again. Just a nod, like we're business partners meeting to discuss quarterly numbers. Cool. Fine. Maybe he's tired. We sit down, and when the server comes by, he suggests we share something. I'm like, sure, why not? I wasn't super hungry anyway, and I figured we'd maybe get a couple of things to split. Nah. He orders one entree for us to share. One. No appetizers. No sides. Just one plate. I'm sitting there doing the mental math like, okay, maybe he's not that hungry either? But I didn't say anything. I just went with it. The meal comes and we eat. It's good. Nothing mind-blowing, but decent. The check comes and it's $41. He pays. No big deal. I thank him. I even say, thank you for dinner, because that's what polite people do. At this point, it's like 11:30 p.m., and I'm thinking we're wrapping things up. But he says, hey, want to grab a drink somewhere? And again, I'm trying to be open. I'm not ready to call it a night, so I say sure. We walk to a little bar down the street, one of those cozy places with dim lights, indie music playing, and a bartender who looks like he DJs on the weekends. We sit at the bar, order a couple of beers, and the bartender asks, same tab? My date says, yeah, sure, and I think cool, he's covering this too. I literally say, thanks for the food and drinks, because I genuinely appreciate it. I'm not the kind of girl who expects a free ride, but it's a nice gesture, and I acknowledged it. Now here's where the night takes a hard left. We walk outside, and I'm expecting, I don't know, maybe a hug? A kiss on the cheek. Something. Instead, he looks at me and says, do you want to come back to my place? It's 1:30 in the morning at this point. And listen, I'm not judging anyone who's into that. If that's your vibe and you're into the whole casual hookup thing, do your thing. But that's not me. At least, not on a second date with someone I barely know. So I say, no, it's getting late. I think I'm going to head home tonight. He pauses, takes off his glasses, looks me dead in the eye and says, okay. Then he turns around and walks away. No good night. No drive safe. Just okay. And then boom, gone. Like a mic drop, but rude. I'm standing there like, wait, what just happened? So I walk to my car, kind of stunned, thinking, okay, I guess that's it. He probably just wanted sex, and now that it's not happening, he's done. Whatever. Not the first time I've encountered that. But then, he calls me. I'm literally halfway home, and my phone starts ringing. I answer, thinking maybe he's apologizing for being abrupt or something. Nope. He says, so what was the point of me paying for your meal and drinks then? I blink. I literally have to pull over because I am so stunned I can't even focus on the road. I say, excuse me? He repeats himself. What was the point of me paying for all that if you're not going to come home with me? I take a deep breath. If you couldn't afford the $41 and the $21 at the bar, I could have paid for my half. I say. That's not a big deal. He gets snippy. Obviously I can afford it, Hannah. I'm like, okay, then what's the issue? He says, I just don't see the point of me doing all that if I'm not getting anything out of it. And that's when I lost it. I said, I didn't realize this was a transactional arrangement. I didn't realize I had to have sex with you because you paid for a meal. That's not how this works. He's quiet for a second and then says, that's not what I'm saying. I'm like, that is exactly what you're saying. If you want a guarantee, hire a prostitute. Don't take someone on a date and then act entitled to their body. And then get this, he hangs up on me. Not only that, but in the span of the next 5 minutes, he blocks me on Bumble, blocks my number, and blocks me on Instagram. Like what? I sat there in my car, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. I felt gross, dehumanized, like I was some sort of vending machine where you put in $62 and expect sex to pop out. And what's worse is that this isn't even an uncommon experience. I talked to a few of my friends afterwards, and every single one had a story like this. A guy who thought paying for dinner entitled him to sex. A man who got mad when the vibes didn't lead to his expectations. Some even more aggressive than this dude. It's exhausting. I don't even know why I'm still on these dating apps. Every time I think, okay, maybe this one's different, I end up disappointed. I'm not even asking for a fairy tale. Like, I'm not expecting Prince Charming. Just someone who treats me with basic respect. Someone who doesn't act like I owe them something for showing up. What really gets me is that I tried. I stayed up late. I made myself available. I dressed up. I showed up. I was kind, polite, and appreciative. And somehow that translated to, she owes me. Nah. So yeah, I'm deleting the apps. Maybe not forever, but definitely for now. Because if this is what dating looks like, entitlement, emotional manipulation, and transactional expectations, I want no part of it. And to that guy, wherever he is, I hope he finds what he's looking for. But I also hope he realizes that women are not vending machines. We're people. And if your idea of romance involves a receipt and a guilt trip, then you're not ready to date. You're just looking to spend money and collect a prize. And I'm not your prize. By the time Saturday night rolled around, I had high hopes for my date. I matched with a guy on Hinge, a cute, charismatic type who seemed genuinely excited to celebrate his birthday weekend in Atlanta. He'd rented an Airbnb, invited friends, and told me to bring a friend along to pregame before heading out. I figured it would be a fun, low-pressure way to meet someone new. My best friend and I arrived at the Airbnb right on time. We walked up the stairs of the condo with a mix of curiosity and excitement. As soon as we opened the door, though, the energy hit us like a cold wind. 3 girls were already inside, in various stages of getting ready. Hair half curled, makeup scattered across the counter, heels tossed around like confetti. I greeted them cheerfully. Hi, I'm Winnie. Nice to meet you guys. I don't do that weird walk-in and say nothing thing. I'm not that girl. They barely looked up. A few mumbled greetings, but mostly cold, dismissive glances. The tension was palpable. The Hinge guy, let's call him Marcus, immediately sensed it too. I'm so sorry, he said, eyes wide. I didn't know it would be like this. Let's go up to the roof. It's chill up there. So we climbed another flight of stairs to the rooftop, which had this gorgeous view of the city skyline. Up there, Marcus let loose. He started venting about how it was his birthday, how none of the girls downstairs cared, and how they refused to go anywhere he wanted. He rented the Airbnb for a fun weekend, but the vibe was completely off. I felt bad. So did my friend. We told him, forget them, hang with us. Let's go out, have a good time, and celebrate your birthday right. We cracked open some hard seltzers, made a toast under the string lights, and tried to salvage the night. But as the drinks kept flowing, I noticed something. Marcus was paying more attention to my friend, like a lot more. He kept asking her questions, leaning in when she spoke, and laughing way too hard at her jokes. I tried to brush it off. I wasn't emotionally invested in him yet, but it still stung a little. Eventually, we rallied the crew, Marcus, his close friend, let's call him Trey, my friend, and me, and decided to head to Havana, a popular club that Marcus had been dying to go to. Trey called an Uber, and we left the rooftop behind, heading into the night with neon lights and bass beats on our minds. But the moment we stepped out of the Uber, I froze. My purse was gone. Panic set in. I turned to the group. I don't have my purse, I said, frantically checking the seats and sidewalk. The Uber had already driven off. I looked at Trey. Please, can you message the driver? Maybe it's still in the car. He was only half helpful. I'll message him, but it's probably back at the house. You probably left it on the rooftop or in the kitchen or something. At that point, I was tipsy and trying not to be that girl, the one who ruins the night over a lost bag. So I told myself, it's probably upstairs. Relax. Don't make this about you. We entered Havana, and for a couple hours, I pushed the worry aside and danced like I hadn't lost access to my whole life. But it was hard to ignore Marcus and how he was practically glued to my friend. He wasn't even subtle about it anymore. I started to feel like a third wheel on my own date. By the end of the night, I was more irritated than intoxicated. When we got back to the Airbnb, everything escalated. Marcus turned to us and said, "Shoo, be quiet. The girls are sleeping. Don't say a word." He wasn't just whispering, he was militant. Every giggle, every whisper, he'd hush us aggressively. "SHHHH. They're gonna hear you." Eventually, he refused to let us into the main part of the house. "Go back up to the roof," he ordered. It was freezing up there. Our buzz was fading into discomfort, but we tried to be polite. We told him we were cold, and finally he led us back downstairs. I thought he was going to let us warm up in the kitchen or living room. Instead, he led us into his bedroom, pushed us inside, and locked the door behind us. That's when I remembered my purse, my keys, my car. Everything I needed to even function was missing. I turned to Marcus and Trey. "Have you heard from the Uber driver? Can I just check the rooftop or the kitchen?" Marcus looked me in the eye. "No, you can't." I was stunned. "What do you mean no? I just need to look." He repeated it. No explanation. No empathy. Trey vanished. Just disappeared from the room. I was trapped, drunk, locked in a room with a guy who clearly did not care about my panic. I started crying. Marcus and my friend sat on the bed, looking at me like I was overreacting. I felt alone, cornered. "Please," I begged. "Just let me look." Still, he refused. Desperate, I went into the attached bathroom and called Corey, my child's father. He picked up instantly. I was sobbing, explaining everything. "I can't get into my house, Corey. My car is outside. I don't have my keys." He was calm but concerned. "I'm on my way." Suddenly, my friend barged into the bathroom. "We can hear you talking shit out there." I snapped. "I'm not talking shit. No one's helping me." She stormed out. I returned to the room, still asking Marcus to please let me check the rooftop. He refused. Again. Eventually, my friend called me and said, "I called an Uber. Let's go." But I didn't want to leave. Not without my things. And honestly, I didn't want to sit in a car with someone I was now furious with. I told her, "You go." She left. It was just me and Marcus now. I asked again, "Can I have the Uber driver's number? Just give me something to work with." He yelled, "Why are you blaming us?" "I'm not blaming you," I said. "I'm just asking for help." He didn't budge. I was crying again, pleading. And then a stranger, someone I hadn't seen all night, appeared in the doorway. "You need to leave," he said coldly. I tried to explain. "I just need my purse. Please." But Marcus and the stranger pushed me out. Literally pushed me down the stairs and out the door. I was on the sidewalk, crying, still on the phone with Corey. He told me to call the non-emergency police line. I did, and they came, but there wasn't much they could do. The Airbnb wasn't mine. They couldn't force anyone to open the door. Corey finally arrived and took me to my sister's house. I slept on her couch that night, devastated. I felt like a failure. Locked out of my house, no car, no money, no ID. The next day, I had to hire a locksmith to get into my car and house. Corey helped me with everything. He was my rock through the entire nightmare. Then, out of nowhere, Marcus texted me. "Good news. The Uber driver has your purse. He said I need to pay $80 for him to bring it. You can pick it up when I get home." I was overwhelmed with relief, but also furious. He'd blocked me on everything before this. Now he was acting like he was doing me a favor. That night he ghosted again. Didn't reply for 5 hours. Finally, at 11 p.m., he texted, "My bad. I was out. It's at my house if you want to come get it." I told him I'd come in the morning. He replied, "Cool. Be here before 9:30. I went the next day and got my purse back. Everything was inside, thankfully. He made sure to tell me how he paid $80 to get it back, as if that made up for everything else. I said nothing. Just grabbed my things and left. Marcus, wherever you are, I hope karma remembers your birthday next year. I was living in New York City at the time, and like many single women in the city, I was swiping through options on what felt like the 100th dating app. That's when I matched with a guy who seemed decent, cute, charming in his messages, and more than anything, persistent. He messaged me regularly, complimented me, asked questions, and seemed genuinely eager to meet. At first, I was cautious. He was a little intense. His messages were frequent, and his energy leaned more eager puppy than mysterious gentleman. But I tried not to judge. Isn't that what everyone says they want? Someone who puts in effort? Someone who doesn't ghost? So after a few days of texting, I finally agreed to go on a date with him. He told me he wanted to take me to a restaurant that was a hidden gem, a place in Westchester, specifically in Yonkers. I'd never been, but I had a car and figured it wouldn't be too bad of a drive. When he offered to pick me up, I declined. I'm a New Yorker born and raised, and I don't get in cars with strangers, no matter how many emojis they use in their texts. I told him I'd meet him there. The day of the date arrived. I put on a cute outfit, did my makeup, and felt cautiously optimistic. I typed the restaurant's address into my GPS, and that's when things started to feel off. The listing showed that the restaurant was closed. Not closing soon. Not open until 10. Just closed. Permanently. I double-checked. Same result. I even looked it up on Yelp. Same thing. No recent reviews. A few complaints about it shutting down. So I texted him. Hey, just double-checking, but it looks like the place is closed. He responded almost immediately. Oh no, Google just hasn't updated it. They're bad about that. I hesitated. This would have been the perfect moment to back out. To say, oh okay, let's reschedule. Or even, actually, I'm not comfortable going out of the city for a first date. But instead, I brushed off my gut feeling and decided to go anyway. I told myself, maybe he's just trying to do something different. Maybe I'm being paranoid. So I made the 40-minute drive from the city to Yonkers, following the GPS as it led me through unfamiliar streets. The neighborhood wasn't bad, but it was quiet. Too quiet. When I pulled into the parking lot of the restaurant, my stomach dropped. There weren't any cars. Not a single one. The building looked abandoned. The signage was faded. The windows were dark. And the worst part, my car was the only one there. I sat there for a moment, unsure of what to do. My phone buzzed. Hey, are you here? I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the screen, heart racing. Then, in my rearview mirror, I saw another car pull in. It parked right next to me. I didn't turn to look. I didn't roll down my window. I didn't wave. I just reversed out of the parking spot and drove away. I didn't even check to see if it was him in the other car. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to risk it. As I drove, I kept checking my mirror to see if I was being followed. I took turns I didn't need to take, pulled into gas stations, looped through side streets. But no one was behind me. Eventually, I made it back to the city. Safe. Shaken. Furious with myself for ignoring every red flag. I opened the app to block him. But he had already unmatched me. Gone. Vanished. Like he'd never existed. No last name. No screenshots. No way to report him. Nothing. I sat on my couch that night, still in my makeup, still in my date outfit, replaying all the almosts in my head. I almost got out of the car. I almost believed his excuse. I almost gave him the benefit of the doubt. And if I had, what would have happened? I was living in Florida at the time, land of humidity, gators, and unfortunately this date. I matched with this guy on Hinge. His photos were vague. Not in a he's hiding something kind of way, but more like every picture was taken with a potato. Blurry, distant, weird angles. The kind of photos where you can't quite figure out if he's attractive or if you're being catfished by a shadow. His bio wasn't much better, just a few sentences about being new to the area and enjoying deep conversations. For some reason I swiped right. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I was in the mood for a social experiment. Maybe I needed a story for my group chat. Who knows? We started chatting. He seemed fine. Not overly enthusiastic, not creepy. Just a neutral energy. We exchanged a few messages and decided to meet up for drinks at a local bar not far from my apartment. I picked the place because I knew it was well lit, casual, and had good beer. I figured even if the date was a bust, at least the beer would be decent. I showed up a few minutes early and spotted him almost immediately. Instant regret. Now, I don't want to sound shallow, but physical attraction matters. And he just wasn't my type. At all. He looked older than his photos, and not in a mature and rugged way. More like, he's been through several lifetimes, and each one beat him up a little. Still, I figured I'd stay for one drink. I was already there, and I tried to be a decent human being. We hugged awkwardly. He smelled like a combination of cologne and car air freshener. Not awful, but not great either. We grabbed our beers and stepped outside to sit at a picnic table. It was a nice evening, a light breeze cutting through the usual Florida stickiness. The bar was moderately full, enough people to feel safe, not enough to drown out a bad conversation. And oh, the conversation. It started innocently enough. Where are you from? What do you do, etc. He had just moved from New York, and he mentioned that several times. As if that alone gave him street cred, or made him interesting by default. He said it like, I'm from New York, so I obviously know things you don't. I let it slide. Then it happened. He referred to someone in a story he was telling as a libtard. I blinked. He didn't laugh. He wasn't joking. He said it with the same casual tone someone might use to say barista or mechanic. Like it was a normal part of speech. Now, I'm not a confrontational person on first dates. I've been taught, like many women, to nod politely, smile, and find a way out. But that word stopped me cold. I gave him a tight-lipped smile and took a long, deliberate sip of my beer. He didn't notice. In fact, he doubled down. He launched into a political rant that bordered on conspiracy theory territory. Government overreach, the media, snowflakes, the greatest hits album of a man who watches too much YouTube in his truck. I tried to pivot the conversation. Asked him if he liked astrology, which was probably a mistake. I enjoy it in a light-hearted way, like, "Oh, you're a Leo? That explains a lot." But he took it to another level. He asked me what my sign was, then immediately judged me for it. "Oh, you're a Gemini? Jesus. That explains everything." "Explains what?" I asked, caught between amusement and offense. "Just, you people are a lot. You people." "Okay." I asked him what his sign was. "Scorpio," he said proudly. "Which is why I can see through people's bullshit." I nodded slowly. Enlightening. Then came the middle name conversation. I have no idea how we got there. Maybe we were playing that awkward game of what's your full name, because we had run out of anything else to say. But he told me his middle name. I won't say it here out of respect, but let's just say it was odd. The kind of name that makes you go, "Wait, really? That's your middle name?" It wasn't offensive or anything, just goofy. I tried to keep a straight face. I really did. But he could tell I was holding back a laugh. I tried to cover it by saying, "Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that before." He didn't smile. He looked embarrassed. I felt bad for a second, until the next moment happened. In the middle of a sentence, without warning, he leaned in to kiss me. My body reacted before my brain could catch up. I physically recoiled. Like full-body pullback, hands up, slight gasp. "Oh no," I said out loud. It just came out. I didn't mean it to be so blunt, but it was instinctual. My entire being rejected the kiss like a bad organ transplant. He looked stunned. His face fell. He leaned back, blinking, as if I had slapped him. "Oh," he said. "Sorry. I thought there was a moment." "There wasn't," I said gently. "I'm sorry. I'm not feeling that kind of vibe." He tried to recover. Okay. That's cool. Maybe we can just get another beer." I shook my head. "No, I think I'm actually going to head out." We sat there in silence for a moment. I think we were both processing. Me, the disaster of the night. Him, the sting of rejection. I stood up, thanked him for the drink, and walked away. He didn't follow. I called an Uber, got in, and let out the kind of laugh that bubbles up when you're slightly traumatized but mostly relieved. And that, my friends, is how I went on one of the worst dates of my life. A date that included a slur used unironically, a political rant, judgment over my zodiac sign, a weird middle name, an attempted kiss that I dodged like Neo in the Matrix. The bar was low, and he still tripped over it. I've since deleted the app, taken breaks from dating, and leaned into the idea that sometimes the best company is my own. But I will say this, if nothing else, bad dates make great stories. And this one is burned into my memory like a PSA. If you're ever on a date and someone uses the word libtard without blinking, leave. If they try to kiss you and your body says, "Abort mission," listen. And if they ask for another round after all of that, run. I was 21 years old, living in Provo, Utah, and like most people around me at the time, I was Mormon. That's important to know because the shared faith was, in theory, supposed to make dating simpler, not creepier. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Joey first reached out to me on Facebook. I didn't know him, never met him, never heard of him. Yet he kept messaging me, asking me out, complimenting my smile, and telling me he felt a connection. I ignored him, obviously, but he was persistent. Eventually, a mutual friend, we'll call him Brad, approached me in person. "Hey, my friend Joey has a crush on you. He really wants to take you out." I raised an eyebrow. "Isn't he old?" Brad shrugged. "I don't know how old he is exactly, but he's a cool guy. Just give him a shot." Against my better judgment, I agreed. I was young, curious, and a little too polite for my own good. Joey picked me up a few days later to take me to a Utah Jazz game in Salt Lake City. He drove, and within the first 5 minutes, I knew I had made a mistake. He did not stop talking. For 30 minutes straight, he told me his life story, every chapter, every accomplishment, every detail. He talked about high school sports, his Mormon mission, college basketball, playing overseas, Wall Street finance jobs, and getting an MBA from Harvard. He listed it all like a LinkedIn profile on steroids. I sat silently in the passenger seat, doing math in my head. Okay, 2 years on a mission, 4 years undergrad. MBA. Wall Street, overseas ball. This man is at least 38. I was 21. The age gap wouldn't have been such a red flag if it weren't for how he acted. He didn't ask me a single question about myself. Not one. I may as well have been a passenger in an Uber with a driver monologuing his memoir. At the game, it didn't get any better. He continued with the self-promoting, occasionally throwing in humble brags disguised as jokes. You know, when you've played pro ball and worked on Wall Street, dating apps just don't cut it anymore. Cool story, Joey. By the time he dropped me off, I was exhausted. I told Brad, no, not for me. Also, he's way older than I thought. Why would you set me up with someone who could be my dad? Brad, clueless as ever, said, I don't think he's that old. But I did some digging. Turned out Joey was 39, 18 years older than me. Legally old enough to have fathered me as an adult. Oh, and there's more. A few days later, a friend of mine, also Mormon, also a BYU student, came home from the library with a story. She said, this guy hit on me at the library today. He told me he was 28. Kept asking me out even after I said I had a boyfriend. His name? Joey. So not only was he old enough to be our dad, he was also lying to freshmen about being 28 and trying to pick them up on campus. Add that to the pile of ick. I had completely written him off until I received the message. The infamous Facebook message. He had my number. He could have texted. But no. He wanted this to be formal. Permanent. A record. I still have it saved. It read, Bree, I think you should rethink the idea that I'm too old to spend a couple eternities with. When our kids are first-round draft picks and we're living out our wildest dreams, would it be so bad to be in love with a two-sport college athlete who played pro basketball, went to Harvard, is still a virgin, and has a rock-solid testimony of the church and will love you forever? A little bold to be sure, but worth another shot, for dinner and a movie maybe? I stared at my screen in disbelief. The language, the ego, the sheer gall. Couple eternities? Still a virgin? Rock-solid testimony? It felt like a pitch from a celestial used car salesman. This previously owned 39-year-old virgin comes with Ivy League credentials, athletic achievements, and eternal love. Act now. I spent 3 days trying to figure out how to respond. I wanted to be kind, but I also wanted to make it clear that I was not interested in being spiritually love-bombed by a man nearly twice my age. Here's what I finally sent back. Joey, there's no question you've done a lot of great things in your life, and you seem like a nice guy. Your age aside, because you are too old to date a 21-year-old, I still wouldn't go out with you again. I'm sorry if this sounds blunt, but your message felt like a sales pitch. When you list your accomplishments like that, it doesn't make me want to date you, it does the opposite. It feels like you're trying to sell yourself instead of connect. I wish you well, but I'm not interested. He responded within 10 minutes. Thanks, Bree. It was meant to be a little tongue-in-cheek. I actually do shy away from talking about those things in normal conversation. I already knew all of that because you told me on our date, but when girls around here are so often deceived by a jacked-up truck and a Vivint watch, one is sometimes forced to play the hand one is dealt. I'm not ashamed of who I am, and you're in the minority of 21-year-olds I've asked out. But I understand if you think differently. When you marry that 25-year-old who has no idea who he is, good luck. Have a great weekend. Babe. Just kidding on the babe part. Winking face. First of all, Vivint makes watches? Second, you're in the minority of 21-year-olds I've asked out. That's supposed to make me feel better? It was condescending, patronizing, and just sad. And yet, to this day, every time I show up on a dating app, Joey likes me. Still. Even now that I'm 35 and he's well into his 50s, he likes me. And he's still lying about his age. His profile says he's 37, which, for the record, is still younger than I am. The kicker? I get stories from other women all the time, DMs, whispers over brunch, mutual friends, about how Joey is still out here, hitting on 19-year-olds, spinning the same, I'm a Harvard-educated pro athlete who's never sinned fantasy. And somehow, he still ends up with red eye in every photo. I'm not kidding. The man has pitch-black eyes in every single picture. I've joked for years that he has Satan in his eyes, and honestly, I stand by that. Joey isn't just a red flag. He's a full parade. I don't know if he's still a virgin. I don't care. But I do know this. No amount of Harvard degrees, basketball trophies, or spiritual flexes can make up for a man who doesn't know how to talk to women like human beings. And if you ever get a message asking you to spend a couple eternities with someone who opens with his resume, run. Let's rewind to a few weeks ago. I matched with a guy on Tinder. I'll call him X, because frankly, that's all he deserves, a placeholder. At first, everything seemed fine. More than fine, actually. He was attractive in a cocky kind of way, but not overly so. His messages were clever, and he had that kind of dry humor that can be really sexy if delivered right. We messaged back and forth for about 3 days, and the conversation flowed easily. I decided to give him my number. That's usually my next step if I think a guy is worth continuing outside the app. We started texting, and he kept the same flirty tone. It wasn't anything deep, we weren't solving world hunger, but it was light, fun, and consistent. A couple of days later, he asked for my Snapchat. I hesitated. I hate Snapchat. I've always felt like it's the unofficial app for men who want to send explicit pictures and have conversations disappear into the ether. Still, I said yes. I was trying to be open, trying to not overthink it. That was mistake number 1. Things shifted quickly once we moved to Snap. His messages started getting more suggestive. Nothing explicit at first, but just a little too familiar, a little too hey baby girl for someone I hadn't even met yet. Still, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just overly flirtatious. Maybe he didn't know how to calibrate his tone. Maybe he was nervous. Spoiler alert, he wasn't nervous. He was a walking red flag in human form. Around day 5, he hit me with this. So, when are you going to plan our date? Excuse me? I laughed it off and replied, shouldn't you be planning the date? You know, since you asked me out. His reply? Oh, you're one of those. One of what, exactly? A woman who expects a man to take initiative when he's the one pursuing? Groundbreaking. At that point, I should have blocked him. But I was curious. Morbidly curious. I wanted to see just how weird this was going to get. And oh boy, it got weird. Later that day, completely out of nowhere, he sent me a message that read, just so you know, when we meet, we're going to F********. And I don't use protection. I finish inside. That's how I mark my territory. I blinked at my phone, stunned. My jaw actually dropped. He said it so casually, like he was telling me the weather forecast. I was speechless for a second, then I typed something like, excuse me? That's not only disgusting, it's dangerous. Are you serious right now? He doubled down. That's just how I am. I don't believe in condoms. I like to claim what's mine. There's a moment in every woman's life where you realize you're speaking to someone who fundamentally does not see you as a person. That was mine. I told him off. Hard. I told him how reckless, irresponsible, and misogynistic he was. I told him he needed help. I told him I never wanted to speak to him again. And then I disappeared. Ghosted. Blocked. Vanished. I should have deleted him on every platform, but I made one crucial error. I didn't remove him from Snapchat. A week later, I went out with friends to a local bar. We were dancing, sipping drinks, laughing over dumb stories from college. I posted a quick snap to my story, nothing major. Just a boomerang of my drink and the club lights. 2 hours later, I saw him. X. He was standing across the bar, looking directly at me. And not like a casual, oh hey, small world kind of glance. He was staring. Hard. I froze. At first, I thought I was imagining it. There was no way he'd shown up here. Right? Wrong. He walked right up to me. Hey, he said, smiling like we were old friends. I saw your story. Wanted to meet you so bad. Figured I'd just come. No. This wasn't happening. He leaned in to hug me. I didn't move. I wasn't warm. I wasn't friendly. I was calculating every exit in that club. Still, I managed to force a smile. Hey, wow. A small world. He immediately put his hand on my waist, too low, and tried to pull me toward him. Dance with me. I took a step back. Actually, I'm with my friends right now. He didn't care. He pressed in closer, his hands wandering. Touching places he had absolutely no right to touch. He was squeezing, groping, like he'd earned access. I kept backing up, but he kept advancing. I looked at my friends across the dance floor and gave them the look. You know the one, the wide eyes, the tight smile, the silent SOS that every woman has perfected. My guy friend saw it immediately. He walked over, casual but firm, and stepped between us. Hey man, he said, putting a hand on X's shoulder. You gotta go. X looked surprised. What? We're just dancing. No, my friend said. You're making her uncomfortable. Leave. Now. Or I'll call security. X hesitated, then muttered something under his breath and walked away. I was shaken. I tried to keep dancing, tried to shake it off, but the night was ruined. My body felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. I felt invaded. Later that night, he had the audacity to text me. "I'm sorry you had a bad time. I'll make it up to you, I promise." There was no apology for showing up uninvited. No acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just a manipulative little breadcrumb to keep the door open. I blocked him. Everywhere. I deleted Tinder. Deleted Snapchat. I was done. And here's the thing, I felt guilty. For ghosting. For not formally ending things. For not being more aggressive when he touched me. But you know what? Sometimes it's okay to ghost. Sometimes it's survival. Ghosting isn't always immature. Sometimes it's self-preservation. You don't owe closure to someone who disregards your safety, your boundaries, or your humanity. The whole experience forced me to reevaluate how I vet men online. No more giving the benefit of the doubt to people who don't deserve it. No more maybe he didn't mean it that way. No more letting curiosity override my instincts. It also made me realize how quickly things can go from flirtatious to frightening. One minute you're trading emojis and talking about favorite movies. The next, a man is telling you he wants to mark his territory inside your body. And that's not just creepy, it's dangerous. What's even more chilling is how casual he was about it. Like it was normal. Like it was sexy. Like any woman should be flattered by that kind of assertion. I've since talked to a few friends about what happened, and every single one had a story that ran eerily parallel. A guy who pushed too fast. A guy who didn't listen. A guy who thought that sex was something owed, not something shared. There's a pattern here, and we don't talk about it enough. These men aren't anomalies. They're everywhere, and they're getting bolder. The next weekend, I went out again, but this time, I didn't post my location. I stuck close to my friends. I didn't give out my number to anyone. And as I walked through the club, I scanned every face, half expecting to see X again. I didn't, thankfully. But I did see a few other guys I'd matched with before. Guys who had also turned out to be red flags in disguise. And for a moment, I felt this wave of exhaustion. Like, is this what dating is now? A minefield of men who treat your body like a prize and your voice like background noise. But then, something shifted. I realized I wasn't scared anymore. I was pissed. And that anger? It's powerful. It's the thing that keeps you from shrinking. It's the thing that reminds you to speak up, to warn other women, to never apologize for taking up space. It was early 2020, just days before the pandemic lockdowns began. I was 18, freshly out of college, and dating apps were still new territory to me. I'd always been hesitant about them, strangers, safety, and the general awkwardness of digital chemistry. But something about Dan seemed familiar. We'd never officially met, but I knew of him through mutual friends and local gossip. That made me feel just safe enough to say yes when he asked me out. Dan was 22, and we matched on Tinder after only a few swipes. His photos gave off, I'm edgy but chill vibes. He wasn't conventionally hot, but he had charisma, and sometimes that's more dangerous. After a few days of chatting, he asked if I wanted to get a drink. Now, at the time, I was used to dates being cute and simple, coffee shops, chain restaurants, maybe Nando's if we were feeling fancy. So when he suggested drinks at a local pub, I thought, wow, how mature. This guy might actually have his life together. We set the date. He picked me up that Friday evening. I remember standing on the curb in front of my house, nervously checking my reflection in my phone screen. When he pulled up, I noticed he smelled good, clean like fresh laundry and cologne with a hint of arrogance. We made small talk on the way. He had a nice voice, and he was charming in a practiced sort of way. But I noticed something early on. He didn't ask many questions about me. He'd toss out a yeah, or that's mad, while I talked, but kept steering the conversation back to himself. Still, I told myself not to judge too harshly. First date jitters are real. The bar he chose was, to put it kindly, not great. It had that sticky floor, stale beer kind of vibe. I'd driven past it 100 times and never once considered going in. But I didn't complain. I was trying to be open-minded. Maybe the drinks were cheap for a reason. We sat at a high-top table near the back. He ordered us 2 ciders and launched into a monologue about his family, his exes, and his job, occasionally peppering in questions like, "So are you like a relationship girl or just casual?" It was the kind of question that feels loaded no matter how you answer. I told him I wasn't seeing anyone and left it at that. About an hour and a half into the evening, he brought up sex. Not in a flirty, testing the waters kind of way. No, he dove into it like a man with an agenda. He asked me if I was a virgin. I was honest. I said yes. His response? Wow, I really respect that. You've got a lot of self-respect. Now, I've heard that line before, and it always rubs me the wrong way. Not because I don't want respect, but because it implies that girls who aren't virgins somehow don't respect themselves. It's a backhanded compliment disguised as virtue. Still, I nodded and smiled, because I didn't feel like turning the date into a debate. It was getting late. Around 9:30, he suggested we leave. Cool, I thought. He's going to drop me home. I'll text my sisters, gossip about the night, and call it a win for dipping my toes into Tinder. But no. Instead, he asked, "Want to go for a drive?" I hesitated. I knew what a drive meant. I wasn't new. But I also didn't know how to say no without sounding uptight or like I was accusing him of something. So I said yes. Mistake number 2. He drove us about 10 minutes away from the bar, still in our hometown, and pulled into a car park next to the local leisure center. Specifically the swimming pool. It was mostly empty, aside from a few scattered cars. I assumed he picked it because it was quiet and out of the way. We parked. He turned off the engine, but left the music playing low. We kept talking. Or rather, I kept talking. He barely said a word. Occasionally, he'd murmur something like, "Tell me more," or "You're interesting," but it felt performative, like he was waiting for me to fill the space until he made his move. I noticed that the light from the street lamp outside fell only on me. His side of the car was almost entirely in shadow. It felt off. Not scary yet, but off. I also noticed my phone had about 10 missed messages from my sisters. They were blowing up my phone. "Where are you? Are you okay? Text back." I brushed it off. "They're just nosy," I told him, laughing nervously. "I'll tell them everything later." Around 11 p.m., he leaned in and offered me a piece of gum. The universal pre-kiss move. Then he asked, "You want to know what I think?" I cringed. TikTok has ruined that phrase for me forever. But before I could respond, he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. His lips were soft but overly eager. The kind of kiss that feels like a job interview, like he's trying to prove something instead of just being in the moment. After a few kisses, he started shifting in his seat. His hand moved from the center console to my knee, then slowly up my thigh. I froze. "Whoa," I said, half laughing, half serious. "Let's slow down." He stopped momentarily, but you could feel the tension in the air, like he was calculating how long he had before trying again. I started talking faster, hoping to derail the mood. "So, yeah, I have to get up early tomorrow. My mom and I are going to this market thing with my sisters." He nodded, smiled, and then ignored it. "Let's stay out a little longer. I like talking to you." "Nope. Not happening." I insisted again. "Really, I should get home." He sighed but finally gave in. "All right. Let's go." He started the car and drove me back, but instead of dropping me off in front of my house, he pulled over at the bottom of my road, like 2 minutes away. "You can walk from here, right?" I looked at him. "You can park outside. It's fine. No one's awake." He shook his head. "Nah, it's better this way." "Better for who?" I got out of the car and speed-walked home. I didn't look back. When I opened the front door, my mom and sister were standing there, fully dressed, eyes wide. "Where were you?" my sister asked. "Do you know where he took you?" "Yeah," I said, confused. "The swimming pool parking lot." They looked at each other. Then my sister said, "That's a known dogging spot." If you don't know, dogging is a UK slang term for engaging in or watching public sex acts, usually in parked cars. Apparently, the leisure center car park was the spot in our area. I felt sick. He knew. He knew. This wasn't a random location. This wasn't a coincidence. He took me there for a reason. He never mentioned it, never joked about it, never even hinted. But it explained the weird energy. The cars. The silence. The fact that he didn't want to drop me at my door. It all made sense. I was so angry. Angry that I hadn't trusted my instincts. Angry that I'd let politeness override my discomfort. Angry that I had to explain to my family why I thought the date had been fine, until it wasn't. Dan texted me the next day. "Had fun last night. Hope we can do it again sometime." I didn't reply. I never saw him again. When I tell people I was catfished by a tattoo sleeve, they usually laugh, and I get it. It sounds like the punchline to a joke. But when you've spent 2 hours on a date with someone who's 80% Lion Clock Rose ink and 0% personality, the humor fades fast. Let's back up. I was 19 and living in the Philippines. I'd been there for a while and loved it, the food, the people, the energy. But dating? That was complicated. As a Western woman in a foreign country, I got a lot of attention, but most of it was either weirdly fetishizing or just plain awkward. So when I matched with a British guy on Tinder, I thought, finally, someone who speaks my language, literally and figuratively. His photos were filtered, sure, but not in a way that raised too many red flags. He looked tall, had a decent jawline, and every single picture featured his tattoo sleeve. Every single one. He was clearly obsessed with it, but I told myself not to judge. Maybe he just liked his ink. Maybe he was proud of the art. Maybe he wasn't a walking Pinterest board of cliché designs. We talked for a few days. The conversation was mid-level flirty, harmless banter, some British sarcasm, and the occasional, when we meet, reference that made me feel like he was serious about seeing me in person. Eventually, he asked me to dinner. I was late. Of course. I'm always late. It's practically a personality trait at this point. When I arrived at the restaurant, I scanned the crowd looking for tall, tattooed, and British. And there he was. He looked like his photos, sort of. Same face, same sleeve, but something was off. Maybe it was the angle. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe it was the fact that he didn't stand up to greet me. That was the first red flag. He just sat there, casually sipping a drink, scrolling on his phone. When I approached the table, he looked up, nodded, and said, "Hey." No standing, no hug, no polite gesture to pull out a chair. Just a nod, like I was a waitress delivering his food. I sat down, trying to shake it off. Maybe he was shy, or tired, or just really into whatever was on his phone. We ordered, and the conversation began. And by conversation, I mean he talked about one thing, his tattoos. I wish I were exaggerating. For 2 hours, he explained every single tattoo on his body, what it meant, why he got it, how much it cost, what the healing process was like. He had a lion, a clock, a rose, a compass, a Roman numeral quote. If you've seen a tattoo trend in the last 10 years, it was on his arm. At first, I tried to engage. Oh, that's cool. What's that one mean? But after the fifth, this one represents my loyalty explanation, I started mentally checking out. I asked him questions about his life, where he was from, what he did, why he was in the Philippines, but he always steered the conversation back to his ink. It was like talking to a human canvas with a mouth. What made it worse was that he wasn't even that nice. He wasn't rude exactly, but he was cold, detached, like he was doing me a favor by being there. He didn't ask me a single question. He didn't compliment me. He didn't even try to flirt. It was the kind of interaction that leaves you feeling smaller, like you're auditioning for someone who already decided they're too good for the role. But I stayed, because I was 19, and I didn't want to be rude, because I thought maybe he'd warm up, because I was already there and didn't want to waste the effort I put into my eyeliner. We finished our meal. The check came, and then it happened. He stood up, and I saw the full catfish. This man was tiny. Listen, I'm 5 feet 2 inches on a good day. I'm short. I know that. But when he stood up, I was looking down at him. Not eye level. Down. He had carefully curated every photo on his dating profile to hide his height. Every picture was from the chest up, angled, or seated. There wasn't a single full body shot. And now I knew why. He was smaller than I was. And not just short, frail. Like, I could carry you in a backpack small. Now let me be clear, height isn't the issue here. I've dated guys shorter than me before. I've dated guys with all types of builds. The issue was that he lied. He deliberately misrepresented himself, knowing it would change how people perceived him. And combined with the arrogance, the lack of manners, and the complete personality vacuum, it was just a lot. We walked out of the restaurant, and I tried to stay polite. I didn't want to make things awkward, but I was praying he wouldn't try to kiss me. He didn't, thankfully. But he did send me a DM later that night. Had a good time. You're chill. I didn't respond. He messaged again the next day. You're not like other girls on here. We should hang out again. Still no response. Eventually, he got the hint. Or maybe he didn't. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he still thinks we had a great date. I told my friends the whole story, and they died laughing. The tattoo obsession, the filtered photos, the height reveal. It became one of those stories I'd pull out at brunch or during girls' nights. Remember tattoo catfish? I'd say, and everyone would groan. So I, 28F, matched with this guy, let's call him CEO Chad, on Hinge. His profile basically screamed money. Black and white headshots. A picture of him working on a MacBook at a rooftop cafe. Another of him in a tailored suit with the caption, "Building something that changes the world." I know, right? His job title said, "Founder and CEO of a tech startup." I'm not someone who's dazzled by job titles, but I'm human. A hot guy with ambition, drive, and a startup? Sure, I'll bite. Our messages were decent. He wasn't overly funny, but he asked good questions. Talked about user experience design, scaling, and something called series of funding that I pretended to understand. I work in HR, so I've heard the lingo, but he was throwing around buzzwords like he'd written a TED Talk. I agreed to meet him for coffee on a Saturday morning. I picked the spot, a cute local cafe with good lighting and even better croissants. I got there a few minutes early, grabbed a table, and was halfway through a text to my best friend when I saw him walk in. First impression, he looked like his photos, but also not. Same face, but somehow more tired. His eyes had that almost slept-in vibe. His hair was styled but greasy at the roots. He wore a blazer over a t-shirt that said "Hustle Culture" and, get this, sweatpants. Designer maybe, but still sweatpants. He gave me a quick bro-hug-style side touch and said, "Sorry, I was up till 4 on a call with a guy in Berlin. Startups don't sleep." Off to a weird start, but whatever. Maybe he's just exhausted from, changing the world. We got in line to order. I went for my usual, oat milk latte and a raspberry scone. He ordered a black coffee and an egg sandwich. Total came to around $18. Here's where the magic happens. He reached into his coat pocket and froze. Then he patted his chest. Then his back pockets. Then he looked at me and said, "OSH*T. I think I left my wallet in my Tesla." My eyebrow twitched. Now, I don't care if you left your wallet in your car, your spaceship, or your reincarnated body from a past life. That's fine. But the way he said "my Tesla," like it was supposed to impress me and soften the blow. He smiled sheepishly. "Mind covering this? I'll hit you back on Venmo." I hesitated, but handed my card to the barista. Small amount, no big deal. But a voice inside me whispered, "Remember this moment." We sat down. He immediately launched into a mini monologue about his startup, something about AI-powered sleep tracking and optimizing REM cycles for professional athletes. I asked him what stage the company was in. He said they were between rounds, which I think means we have no money but we're pretending we do. I asked how big his team was. He said, "Right now it's just me and a developer in Ukraine." I asked how long the company had been running. He said, "Technically we're pre-launch, but the algorithm is like 80% there." I asked what the company was called. He said, "We're rebranding. The old name was kinda startup-y, I nodded, sipping my latte, realizing I was on a date with a man who called himself a CEO, but had no product, no team, no funding, and no active business name. He then pivoted and told me about his failed venture last year, a plant-based protein bar company that, and I quote, "got wrecked by big granola." I asked what that meant. He said, "The market was oversaturated. Plus, I spent too much on packaging design." But the bars slapped. I was trying so hard not to laugh. Not because he failed, failure happens, but because he talked about it like he was Elon Musk and not a guy who couldn't pay for breakfast. He then tried to turn the convo on me. "So what's your 5-year plan?" I said something about wanting to move into organizational leadership and DI strategy. He nodded like he was listening, then said, "That's cute. HR is important. Keeps the wheels turning." I resisted the urge to stab my scone with a fork. We wrapped up about 40 minutes later. He said, "I'll walk you to your car." I declined. I was parked in the back lot and didn't want to be awkwardly cornered behind a dumpster while he tried to align our energies. Instead, I said, "It was nice meeting you. Let me know when you've got that Venmo." He laughed. "Right. I got you. What's your handle?" I told him. He typed it into his phone. "Awesome. I'll send it tonight." Reader, he did not send it tonight. Or tomorrow. Or ever. I waited 3 days. Nothing. I sent a gentle reminder. "Hey, just following up on that coffee, $18. Thanks again." He left me on read. I waited another 2 days and sent a Venmo request. It sat there, pending. I checked again a week later. He unmatched me on Hinge. I found his Instagram, I'm not proud, and guess what? He was promoting his new business venture, a line of mindset coaching PDFs for $49.99 each. PDF. Coaching. No credentials. No experience. Just a Canva template and a link in bio. That's when I realized he wasn't a CEO. He was a con man with Canva Pro. The audacity of this man to flex about his Tesla, his startup, and his grind set, only to ghost me over $18? Unbelievable. But also kind of poetic? I posted about it in my group chat, and my friend said, "Girl, you just got tech bro catfished." So yeah, that's my story. I paid for my own oat milk latte, his greasy egg sandwich, and a front row. So I, 26F, matched with this guy on Hinge. We'll call him Mystic Mike. And from the jump, he gave off serious I journal by moonlight energy. You know the type, lots of linen shirts, rings on every finger, and a profile that says spiritual but not religious. He had quotes from Rumi and something about healing his inner child. Honestly, I wasn't mad about it. I've dated finance bros before and thought, maybe a guy who's into energy healing will actually listen when I talk. Oh, naive little me. Our conversations were interesting. Lots of talk about the universe, astrology, and how people are either ascending or stuck in karmic loops. I didn't really know what that meant, but I liked his voice notes. He had a hot, calming voice, and I'm not above admitting that played a role in me agreeing to our first date. Date number 1 was at this little boho coffee shop where everyone looked like they'd either written a screenplay or were trying to start a kombucha brand. He showed up wearing 3 necklaces, a beanie even though it was 70 degrees, and greeted me with a hug that lasted slightly too long and ended with a whispered, "Your energy feels grounded." Cool. Weird. But cool. We talked for about 2 hours. He told me he was an intuitive empath and that he doesn't work a 9 to 5 because capitalism crushes the soul. He made money doing healing sessions and intuitive coaching, which I'm 90% sure means he charges people to tell them what they already know. Still, he was charming. A little intense, but charming. He complimented my aura, said he felt pulled toward me, and kept brushing his fingers across my wrist while talking about chakra alignment. So yes, I agreed to a second date. Don't judge me. We've all ignored a few red flags for a guy who smells like sandalwood and says divine feminine with a straight face. Date number 2 was at his apartment. He invited me over for wine, music, and, his words not mine, a soul connection ritual. I figured that meant we'd vibe, maybe make out a little, and he'd show me his crystal collection or whatever. His apartment was exactly what you'd expect. Incense burning in every corner, tapestry on the ceiling, books like The 4 Agreements and Sex at Dawn stacked next to the bed, and a cat named Saffron. He poured us glasses of organic red wine, from a biodynamic vineyard, he said proudly, and we sat on floor cushions while he put on a playlist called Womb Frequencies. I wish I was making that up. Then he pulled out a tarot deck. "I feel like the cards have something to say to us," he said. Now, I'm not super into tarot, but I've had a few readings before, and I think it's fun. I told him, sure, let's do it. He shuffled the deck with his eyes closed, whispering something that sounded like a prayer to the universe. Then he asked me to pull a card. I pulled the Tower. If you're not familiar, the Tower is like the OSHT asterisk card of tarot. It usually represents sudden upheaval, destruction, chaos, truth being revealed. Basically, it's not great. The moment he saw it, his entire vibe changed. Like instantly. He stared at the card for a full minute, completely silent. Then he said, "That's not good." His voice dropped an octave. I kind of laughed and said, "Oh no, are we cursed?" He didn't laugh. He looked at me, dead serious, and said, "This explains a lot. Your energy has been giving me resistance since you walked in. I thought it was just my own shadow work, but now I see it's you." I blinked. "Come again?" He stood up and started pacing. "You're carrying something heavy. Something dark. I've been feeling it all night. And the Tower confirms it. You're in the middle of destruction energy. Have you been through something traumatic recently? A breakup? Death? Betrayal?" I was stunned. No. I had a rough week at work, but..." He cut me off. "It's deeper than that. There's something karmic here. Something from a past life. And it's crashing into mine." At this point, I was trying to figure out if he was joking. He wasn't. He picked up a piece of Palo Santo, lit it, and started waving it around me while muttering, "I cleanse this portal. I reject this chaos. I swear on everything." Then he looked at me, eyes wide, and said, "You need to go. I need to protect my space." I was speechless, just sitting there on a cushion with a glass of warm wine, watching this man spiritually evict me. I stood up slowly. "Okay. I didn't mean to bring bad vibes." He shook his head. "It's not personal. It's energetic. But if I let this spiral continue, I'll undo years of inner work. I can't let that happen. I grabbed my purse and my shoes and started toward the door. As I was leaving, he said, "Wait." I turned around, thinking maybe he'd calmed down. He handed me a small rose quartz crystal and said, "Take this. You need it more than I do." I thanked him because what else do you say, and left. I sat in my car for a full 5 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Then I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, held up the crystal, and said, "What the actual F***?" I blocked him that night. Not because I think tarot is scary. Not because I don't respect spiritual people. But because that man turned a card into a weapon and used it to unload all his chaotic nonsense onto me. Since then, I've added a new rule to my dating life. If a man mentions energy more than 3 times in the first date, I'm out. Bonus update. A week later, he messaged me from a new number. Said he'd been sitting with the message the tower brought, and that he was open to reconnecting now that he'd recalibrated. I didn't respond. I gave the rose quartz to my cat. I met him on Hinge. His name was Ryan. He had that boy-next-door look, a little rugged, a little polished, the kind of guy who probably played high school sports and still brought it up at parties. Our chats were fine. Not electric, but fine. He was sarcastic, and I like sarcasm, until it turns into something else. He suggested a sushi spot for our first date. Classy, quiet, kind of tucked away in a corner of the city. I said yes. I spent a little extra time getting ready. Nothing fancy, just enough to feel confident. I wore my favorite black dress, the one that hugs my curves without screaming for attention. I did my makeup soft and clean, and let my curls fall the way they wanted. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting at a corner table, scrolling on his phone. He looked up, barely smiled, and said, "You're late." I blinked. "It's 6:58. We said 7. He shrugged. "I've been here since 6:30. I like to be early." Okay, weird flex, but sure. I sat down, trying to shake off the awkward start. "Well, I'm glad we made it. This place looks great." He smirked. "Hope you like raw fish." "I do," I said, smiling. He looked at me for a second, then said, "You don't look like someone who eats sushi." I laughed, confused. "What does that mean?" He leaned back. "I don't know. You just have more of a burger and fries vibe." I felt my stomach twist. It was subtle, but it landed. He was making a comment about my body, about my size. I wasn't insecure about it, not usually. But the way he said it, casual, dismissive, made me shrink a little in my seat. I brushed it off. "Well, I like both." "Sure," he said. "Balance, right?" The waiter came. We ordered, him with confidence, rattling off items like a regular. I stuck with a simple roll and a side of edamame. And then the second jab came. "You don't talk much, huh?" I tilted my head. "I've been here for 5 minutes." He laughed, but it wasn't warm. "Just saying. You're kind of quiet. I thought you'd be more lively based on your profile." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't shy. I was just trying to get my footing. First dates are like that. Some people talk too much, some people ease in. I gave him a small smile. "Well, I'm here now. You'll get to know me." He nodded, then looked me up and down, not in a flirty way. In a judgmental way. Like he was scanning me for flaws. "What do you do again?" he asked, already looking at his phone. "I work in marketing," I said. "Content strategy, mostly." He chuckled. "So you write tweets for a living?" Cue another twist in my gut. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Like my job wasn't real. Like I was playing pretend in the grown-up world. I tried to keep my voice light. "It's a little more than tweets, but yeah, social media's part of it." He smirked. "Sounds cute." Cute. Like I was a puppy, not a professional. Our food arrived, and for a few minutes, we focused on eating. He didn't compliment the food. He didn't ask questions. He just talked about himself. His gym routine. His ex-girlfriend who was crazy. His car. His fantasy football league. How hot girls these days are either taken or damaged. I nodded, sipping my drink, trying to decide when it would be socially acceptable to leave. And then, because of course, he started giving me unsolicited advice. "You know," he said between bites, "you'd probably be a lot more confident if you wore less makeup. Guys like natural girls." I stared at him. "I'm wearing a tinted moisturizer and lip gloss," I said. "This is natural." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh, well, then you should smile more." And there it was. The classic line. The one that turns every woman's spine to steel. I leaned back, put down my chopsticks, and looked him dead in the eye. I smile when I'm having a good time. He gave a short laugh. Feisty. No, I said, my voice perfectly calm. Just not here to be picked apart. He blinked. Like he hadn't expected me to say anything. Like he thought I'd sit there and let him chip away at me one comment at a time. And the worst part, I almost had. That's what emotional bullies do. They disguise cruelty as flirtation. They lace insults with compliments. They poke at you, prod at you, test how far they can go. And if you react, they say you're too sensitive or can't take a joke. He looked at me for a long second, then said, "You're not like other girls I go out with." I'm aware. We finished the meal mostly in silence. When the check came, he hesitated. "You want to split?" I smiled. "No. You invited me. You can cover your half." He paid, grumbling about modern women and how no one appreciates chivalry anymore. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and said, "Thanks for dinner." He followed me outside. "You headed home now?" "Yep," I said, not slowing down. "I could walk you to your car." "I'd rather you didn't." He paused. "So that's it?" "That's it." He scoffed. "You know, I was actually trying to help you. Some of the stuff I said, you needed to hear." I turned to face him one last time. "No, you weren't trying to help me. You were trying to see how much you could tear me down before I noticed." He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. I walked away. I got in my car, locked the doors, and sat in silence for a moment. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I was proud. I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I didn't question if I was the problem. I saw the bully behind the charm. And I left. That was the last time I saw Ryan. But not the last time I'd encounter men like him. They're everywhere. On apps. In offices. Sometimes in your own friend circles. The ones who push your boundaries, then call it teasing. Who criticize your body, your voice, your job, then say they're just being honest. They call it confidence. It's not. It's control.